right, send it in.
And hello, everybody, to episode 11 of the Puckett Send It In podcast. And the good times keep rolling for us here at the pod, as once again, we find it amazing that our first ever season of this show, we get to keep going and talk about the Florida Panthers advancing to the Stanley Cup Final, where they will be taking on the Edmonton Oilers, with Game 1 being in Sunrise this Saturday at 8 o'clock on, I believe, ABC. So, Alex, my good friend and co-host, how are you feeling? It's not every day you can preview a Stanley Cup Final with your team in it, so the vibes must be high.
Oh, they're definitely high. It's really crazy. I was listening to an interview today with the Edmonton head coach, and he was asked, how are you going to overcome all of the word that the reporter used was tons of Stanley Cup experience for the Panthers. How are you going to overcome the tons of playoff Stanley Cup experience that the Panthers have? And I thought to myself, that's crazy, because if you told me 5 years ago that not only will the Florida Panthers be in the Stanley Cup, but they will have made it enough times, 2 times, to where reporters are asking the opposing coach, how are you going to overcome all of their experience? So that's when I knew that the Panthers really made it.
And of course, we have to give a big props to to Bill Zito and the front office of Florida for turning the Panthers into, admittedly, what was once a nightmare organization into what it is now, the absolute gold standard of how an organization should be run in the National Hockey League from top to bottom, the front office, the coaching, and of course the talent that this team has, to the point where they are favored to win the Stanley Cup from, I think, most Vegas bettors. We'll talk a bit more about Edmonton in a second, but let's quickly go over games 5 and 6 of the Eastern Conference Final. Florida won both games. I think they won both relatively convincingly. Neither game went into overtime, thank God. Instead, Florida took care of business in regulation. And we had a discussion about this right before the show, and it was something I would have brought up, but New York relied so much on their goalie, Igor Shesterkin, to carry them this entire series that they forgot how to play playoff hockey in every other aspect those last couple of games against Florida. If you get by Shesterkin, New York is an AHL team. The Everblades could take them on, Shout out Everblades, by the way. They're in the Kelly Cup for the 3rd straight year. But you take away Shesterkin from that New York Rangers squad, and it's amazing how they even got this far.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, no, multiple times during that series, the announcers would say, oh, that's a 15 minutes gone by now without a Rangers shot on goal. Multiple times. Remember that was a huge storyline in Game 1 of the Tampa series? And against New York, it happened multiple times in multiple games. I was just telling you before the show started, other than that one game where the Rangers took it in overtime 5-4 in Game 3. Was it Game 3? Other than that, the Panthers would have won every other game if it wasn't for Shesterkin. It's very possible that the Panthers either swept or won 4-1 if it wasn't for Shesterkin. He played a tremendous series. The Panthers dominated in offensive zone time. They dominated in high danger scoring chances. They dominated in shots on goal. Just everything, every metric, the Panthers dominated in except for saves. And that's really it. Igor Shesterkin was the only person that kept them in the. And I guess Alexis Lafreniere also did a pretty good job, but
Lafreniere was good, but Florida did what they've tend to do their best this postseason, which is to silence the very best offensive players that their opponents have. They did it against Tampa with Kucherov and Point. They did it against Boston with Pastrnak, and they once again did it against New York with Panarin. It's just pure domination. And again, Shesterkin might have more saves, but don't get that twisted. Bobrovsky had an amazing playoff series, but the fact of the matter is Florida's defense, their defensemen, overall made so many unbelievable deflection saves, or everyone name it, breakaways, that Bobrovsky kind of had a relatively calm playoff series, at least compared to some of those games against Boston where he kind of got shelled. You never had that feeling that he was going to have a bad game against New York, just generally speaking.
Yeah, for the most part, he let in a couple softies here and there. There were some games.
Alex, I think you're muted, my guy.
Oh, is this better?
No, you're still muted, Holmes.
That's so weird.
It happens. Don't worry. It happens all the time.
Can you hear me?
Well, as Alex is working to get his setup fixed, I will go over some statistics that I was probably going to go over anyway. Like I had mentioned earlier, it's currently Florida minus 130 to win the Stanley Cup Final, Edmonton plus 110. If you want to look at specific odds to win the Conn Smythe Trophy, it's actually Connor McDavid plus 200 overall. Barkov is right behind him. Barkov, Bobrovsky, and Tkachuk are all behind McDavid as far as odds to win the MVP. And then a player to score the most goals in the series, it's Zach Hyman for Edmonton, and of course Sam Reinhart for Florida. Alex, you there?
Yes.
I think you're still muted, Alex. Definitely make sure your microphone is okay. If you didn't accidentally mute the general computer. All right, so let's keep going as Alex. Yeah, once again, Alex is sorting out his problem. To go over some other instances here. Game 1 specifically, and we'll get into all this later on in the show as we start to wrap up, but it's on Saturday, June the 8th. Florida is leading minus 135 as far as the money line goes. Over-under is 5.5, which I think is very, very, very high considering the low amount of goals that both Edmonton and Florida give up, generally speaking. Game 2 is going to be on Monday, June the 10th. And then unlike most playoff series, there's going to be a 3-day rest period between games 2 and 3. So game 3 will be on Thursday, June the 13th. So game 4 will be on Saturday, June 15th. Game 5, once again, 3 days of recovery because, as I'm sure you've probably heard on social media, Florida to Edmonton is going to be the longest distance between two opponents in the Stanley Cup Finals ever. Anyway, Game 5 is on Tuesday, June 18th. Game 6 is on Friday, June 21st. And Game 7 is on Monday, June the 24th. Again, assuming that Games 5, 6, and 7 are even going to be necessary. So regardless, there's a lot of storylines in this Stanley Cup for both squads. Of course, for Edmonton, it's been a very long time since the Canadian team in general has won the Stanley Cup, not to mention they have arguably the greatest player in hockey right now. Connor McDavid is an absolute monster for Edmonton. And, of course, Florida's story, they lost to Vegas in last year's Stanley Cup Finals. They're looking to take that momentum and take a very incredible bounce-back season and actually close out the finals for once, the first time in franchise history. They would do that. So, once again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. However, once Alex is back, we'll get things going back again. But to provide some other opinions on Florida's series against New York, we had mentioned that Shesterkin was the embodiment of that Rangers team, and they pulled a Lundqvist and did not really support him as much as they would have liked. And because of that, he's probably not going to re-sign with the New York Rangers. Just my personal opinion, but we'll see as the offseason goes. Obviously, don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the future of the New York Rangers. But was this the hardest series that Florida played in? I don't know. I feel like Boston. Alex is back. Let me give me just 1 second. Alex, how you doing?
Good. Where did I leave off with you? Can you hear me?
Alex, we still cannot hear you. Oh my goodness. Is there a way you could change the audio output to something else? Maybe your computer's audio or mic? Definitely play around with the. Oh, and he's gone. Well, we'll keep things going here then. Looking more at the general statistics for the Florida Panthers in this postseason. Currently, the point leader for the Panthers. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be really surprised about this. It is Matthew Tkachuk with 19 points total. Let me go ahead and check one thing on my end. Okay. I just had to check my audio. Aved. So your leading goal scorer for the Florida Panthers so far in the postseason has been Carter Verhaeghe. Assist leader again is Matthew Tkachuk with 14 assists so far in this postseason. Looking at a negative statistic, Nick Cousins has spent the most time in the box of 20 minutes total. Goaltending wise, it's been all Sergei Bobrovsky. Anthony Stolarz has not had to spend a second inside the ice at all this series. He's 377 saves. Excuse me, 400 and I actually make sure I got it. Yeah, 377 saves so far in the postseason. 12 wins, 5 losses, and just some really amazing statistics overall from offense and defense. So that's it. So as I had mentioned to Alex as this show began, something that makes the Florida Panthers such a dangerous opponent in the postseason is their ability on defense to absolutely negate anything that the opposing offenses can throw at them, specifically their star players. Florida does such an amazing job with their star players. And like I said, Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov had amazing regular season statistics for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but as soon as they took on Florida, they scored 6 goals in that one game in the series, but beyond that, their offense was severely limited. So, Jesus, man. And again, you take on Boston. Boston definitely gave Florida a run for their money. Pastrnak, again, an amazing regular season player who had some solid performances here and there against the Panthers and in the 2 wins that they had, but beyond that, it was kind of a wash as far as what Pasta could do against Florida. And again, this past series, New York has a few really talented players on their team. You have Lafreniere, you have Trocheck, you have Panarin, but beyond that, not a whole lot of success came from their stars as well. So not much to say except that the big question that I will ask Alex Kretschik as soon as he gets back here is if Florida can continue that success against the best hockey player in the world, arguably Connor McDavid. Edmonton, just to sort of give a quick, very brief history of the Oilers, because again, the history of these two teams are very different. Edmonton, one of the older teams in the NHL, they have 5 Stanley Cup wins, the most recent being in 1990. Meanwhile, this is the 30th anniversary of the Panthers. They do not have a Stanley Cup title, but they've been there 3 times, or they've been there 2 times. This will be their 3rd, most recently last year where they lost to the Golden Knights in 5 games. So we will see. We'll take a quick break here and see if Alex Kretschik can get back on stream here, and we can continue going on with the show. So we'll take a quick break here. Alex,
Yes.
I hear you.
Wonderful.
Okay, let's get the show back on gear here, Alex. I said quite a bit about some statistics here and there, but before we get into the Stanley Cup Final, any thoughts on New York? Any final thoughts on how Florida handled the Rangers?
Yeah, I thought they did a fantastic job. Like, that's not a bad hockey team, and that's not exactly a thin hockey team. They've got a lot of great guys on offense. They just the Rangers just couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
I didn't see anything from Panarin. I didn't see anything from Zibanejad. I didn't see anything from Kreider or Fox or anyone really, other than Lafreniere. So it makes me confident. I know those guys aren't Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl,
no,
but it still gives me a little bit of confidence going into this round, because this round, and I don't know if you're ready to talk about the Oilers yet, but I think that this is probably the most interesting matchup that the Panthers could have had, because it is a defensive-minded team in the Panthers going up against probably the best offense in the National Hockey League, certainly the best scorer in the National Hockey League in Connor McDavid. So it's a classic best offense versus best defense battle. I'm so excited to see how that one shapes out.
I am too. By the way, little weird thing happened in Game 6. The Florida crowd started chanting Igor towards the end of the game. What was your take on that? I don't know if I saw a whole lot of buzz about it on social media, but watching it, listening it was a little strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a classic taunt. It is a little strange to do to Igor Shesterkin, considering he was the only one, like I said before, keeping them in the series. And he still had like a pretty good game in Game 6. Like, he was certainly not the reason that they lost. I much would have rather had them chant Mika Zibanejad's name, but I don't know how you can do that. It's got like 5 syllables in his name.
I know, that's one hell of a name.
So, but no, I liked it. It's the playoffs. Chirp whoever you want. It was just funny that like that's the one guy that you really can't chirp in this series.
I know. So once again, the President's Trophy winner goes down, and for the second straight year, Florida are the Grim Reapers that take them down.
If you win a President's Trophy, just stay right there. The Panthers will be there soon to take care of you.
Because who would know better than the Panthers? Having the President's Trophy a few years ago, getting demolished by Tampa in the second round.
Exactly.
So let's talk about those Oilers. Like I said, you have the greatest player in hockey, Connor McDavid. You have Leon Draisaitl. Draisaitl, I believe that's how you pronounce it.
Yep.
So that's a deadly 1-2 combo that Edmonton has. But I think the big story about the Oilers is the fact that when this season started, they were like one of the worst teams in hockey. They made a giant move in firing their head coach, bringing in Stuart Skinner, who obviously has yet to coach a full season in the NHL. He's obviously his first time in the Stanley Cup Final, but to go from firing your head coach in the earlier part of the season to now representing the West in the Stanley Cup Final is an amazing storyline on its own for the Oilers. And how much is that going to play a factor into the championship of hockey when you have a head coach that, like I said, has not completed a full season of hockey yet at the head coach level?
Yeah, Jake, real quick, can you pull up how many playoff games and how many total seasons Paul Maurice has coached in the NHL? Because I just thought of this before I came on. So I don't have all my research yet, but is this going to be one of the biggest discrepancies in coaching experience in Stanley Cup history? Because Chris Knobloch, like you said, this is his first time ever being a head coach in the National Hockey League. He was most previously, he was the head coach of the Hartford Wolfpack, the Rangers, actually, ironically, the Rangers AHL affiliate. Before that, he was the Philadelphia Flyers assistant coach in 2017, 2018, and 2019. But this is his first time behind the bench as a head coach in the National Hockey League. And here he is going against Paul Maurice, who has coached for how many seasons is it, Jake?
I don't know. I don't have the exact number, but it's well over 2 decades, and Coach Maurice has been to 3 Stanley Cup Finals. I kept saying Stuart Skinner on accident. That's their goalie. Another great story regarding Edmonton and their goaltender and Stuart Skinner. But regardless, yeah, like you said, the coaching difference between Maurice and Chris Knobloch is wow. I mean, obviously they weren't going anywhere with Jay Woodcroft back in November. They were not good. They did not have a direction with that coach. They bring in this new guy, and they really they found their obviously I feel it feels good that they found their coach of the future, just like Florida has found their coach of the future with Paul. So
Yep. Paul Maurice, 26 seasons, 1,848 regular season games.
That's very funny.
Over 100 playoff games. By the way, the Panthers have won 50 total playoff games in their history. Paul Maurice has won 25 of those. So, yeah, no, it's a tremendous story out of Edmonton. They deserve to be here. They have had talent on that team for a few years now, but it now finally seems like they've got enough depth to do it. I still don't think they're as deep as Florida, but they're definitely deeper than they used to be. They finally have a coach who seems to know what he's doing. Not that the last guy didn't know what he was doing, but this Chris Knobloch seems like he's really got them going. Because, like you mentioned, the Oilers started 2-9-1 to start the season. They were tied for last place. They had a 16-game win streak somewhere in there starting in December. They're really firing on all cylinders. And then, of course, I was thinking this earlier today. I was hoping for years to see Connor McDavid finally in the Cup. I wanted to see him on national television, prime time. I wanted the entire country to see him. I wanted to see him because I'm not watching a lot of Oilers games during the regular season. But now that they're on at 8 p.m., I wanted to see him. I wanted to see him win the Cup. And now he's finally there, and he's playing the Panthers. So it kind of sucks. I kept asking to see Connor McDavid win a Cup, and the monkey paw curled up and said, okay, he might win the Cup, and it'll be against the Panthers if he does it.
That's very ironic, but I don't know, man. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of Edmonton, and we obviously have to start with Connor McDavid, their points leader so far in the postseason, 31 points total, 26 assists. Like we had mentioned earlier, Florida has done well against the best offensive players that teams like Tampa Bay, Boston, and New York have brought to them. How are they going to do the same thing with McDavid? Obviously, it's no easy challenge. They had that one goal in Game 6 where he did the work all by himself to get that goal against Dallas. How do you stop a player like McDavid, just generally?
Well, it's going to take all 5 guys on the ice. It's going to be an entire 5-on-5 system to stop McDavid before he even gets the puck. I think that'll be the key. I think once he gets the puck, you're kind of at the mercy of him. So I think it's going to require the entire 5-man effort to make sure he doesn't even get the puck in the first place. Here's the difficult part, though, Jake. As good as Connor McDavid is, obviously, because of how good he is, it opens up other legitimate scorers on that Oilers team. He's got guys on his line. He's got guys on his line like Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They're big scorers. Zach Hyman was actually 3rd in goal scoring during the regular season this year, just 3 goals behind Sam Reinhart, who scored 57. Zach Hyman also has 14 goals in the playoffs, which leads all skaters across all teams. And then Leon Draisaitl is number 2. Like, Connor McDavid's not even the 2nd biggest scorer on his team so far because he's got other guys that can help him out over there. So that's what makes it difficult. There's so many other guys that you got to worry about.
Yeah. Now, by the way, were you surprised at how that series ended against Dallas? The Stars took him to 6 games, but those last 2 games were pretty uncompetitive between the Stars and the Oilers.
Yeah, it was weird. Pete DeBoer of the Dallas Stars was asked about his team's effort, which I thought was unfair because I don't think that a team's effort is ever low during a playoff game. Right. But it did look like they were running out of steam, which I don't know why. I'm sure we'll find out, as we do for every eliminated team, that this guy was playing with a broken leg and this guy was missing an arm and we didn't realize it. I don't know. It just seemed like they ran out of steam. It kind of felt like watching the Panthers of last year, but they were in the Cup Final against Vegas. It kind of just seemed like they ran out of steam. It was very weird because you're right. Actually, I do want to say, though, did I miss something on the broadcast? Because I got 10 shots on goal for Edmonton. Like Dallas shot Edmonton like 35 or 40 to 10.
That was, I think it was the lowest shots on goal for a, I don't know, clincher in conference final. The fewest in a series clinching game in NHL history. It was 10. Dallas had 35, and it was not enough. So
yes, that's the thing. Skinner and net just stopped everything. That's part of it. Like you said, like he's not a world-class goalie like I think Bobrovsky or Shesterkin is or any of the other guys, but he's still no slouch. Like the Panthers could absolutely find themselves in a game where they get goalied by him. Because that's the thing. Like, yes, it was uncompetitive on the scoreboard, but Dallas was still getting their chances in.
Skinner is from Edmonton. He is so that's another great storyline that the Oilers have, that their goalie was raised in that city, and now he's sort of repping the city as he looks to win the Stanley Cup. Nice mustache, but yeah, Florida went through murderer's row as far as goaltenders when they had, of course, Vasilevsky, Swayman, who was on a heater, and Shesterkin, who had one of the best heaters we've ever seen from a losing effort. Where does Skinner rank as far as when compared to what we've seen with Vasilevsky, Swayman, and Shesterkin? Like, on what tier is he compared to those guys?
So he's certainly, and this just goes to show how much of a gauntlet the Panthers have had to go through. Skinner is easily the quote-unquote worst goalie that the Panthers will play in the postseason. Even with Vasilevsky not being as good during the regular season as he usually is, that was still a difficult task against him. Stuart Skinner, he's good. He's got an .897 save percentage. He's allowing in about 2.5 goals per game. He's fine. Like, he's good. But if the Panthers were able to do enough against Shesterkin, Vasilevsky, and Swayman, I think they'll be fine against Skinner.
And that sort of alludes to Florida's pressure on goalies. They had that one game in a losing effort, which they had like over 100 shots just in general. And again, it's that thing of quality over quantity. Well, that sort of changes when you have a goalie that just can't track 80, 90 per hour shots as well as Shesterkin did compared to that of Skinner. I want to look back at, obviously, I think we all know that games you take on against teams in the regular season usually don't track that well into the postseason, but I would like to go back to some of the regular season games against Edmonton. They took them on twice, and I believe they won both games. The first was on December 16th over in Edmonton. That was a 5-1 win for the Panthers, and then later on in the year, it was, where was it? Where was the second game against the Oilers? I had it here earlier, and now it is vanished on me. Do you have it there, Alex? There, because I know they played them twice, but
the Panthers won both games. The first was November 20th.
Okay,
it was 5-3, and then December 16th it was 5-1. So it's and then Chris Knobloch was hired on November 12th. So it was actually 8 days after Knobloch was hired. But again, not the same team. They certainly got better pretty quickly, but they still weren't the finished product that they are right now.
Who was at net for Edmonton in those games?
Good question.
All right, so the 5-3 game it was Picard in net. And then for the 5-1 game, it was also Picard. So, unfortunately, yeah, they don't have any experience taking on Skinner. Obviously, he was sort of brought into this playoff series out of the blue, so naturally. But they don't have any experience against Skinner in the regular season, and I doubt we're going to see any of Picard in the Stanley Cup Final anyway, because again, Skinner's on a heater. But regardless, I feel like that's got to be the weakest point on this Edmonton team, aside from depth and maybe coaching, that their goaltender does not compare to anything Florida has seen already, and as well as their own goalie in Sergei Bobrovsky. So when I saw that the over-under was 5.5, I was kind of taken back. That seems relatively high for what could be another low-scoring contest, considering the success of both goalies in Bobrovsky and Skinner. But I feel like goaltending-wise, the edge definitely goes to the Vezina Trophy finalist.
Yeah, definitely. The Oilers aren't known for their defense, and their defense is certainly weaker than their offense, but it's still no slouch. I mean, they've allowed they're number 6 in goals allowed per game in the playoffs. Even during the regular season, they were in the top half of the league. Let me see the exact number. They were they weren't near the bottom of the league. Actually, yeah, they were in the top 10. Just on the around 9 or 10 in goals allowed per game. So their defense is no slouch, but so the goaltending is certainly the weak point. It'll still be a little bit of a challenge because the defense in front of him is still pretty solid. Yeah, I don't think they'll have any problem doing that. If I was a betting man, I would take the over on every game. The opposite of what I would have done against New York, where I think if you hit the under, you would have won on almost every game except for that one game that ended 5-4 in overtime.
Who would you say was the toughest opponent Edmonton's taken on in the postseason? Obviously, it wasn't Los Angeles. They kind of breezed by them. Vancouver took them to 7. Vancouver very well could have won that series against the Oilers, and of course, Dallas took them in 6. Who was the toughest opponent? Was it Vancouver or Dallas, in your opinion?
Vancouver gave them the biggest task just because it went 7, and Vancouver did look pretty good. But I still think that Dallas was the better team. I actually thought that Dallas and Florida were doppelgangers of each other. I think that the Panthers are a better version of that style, but I think that the Dallas Stars are very good, and they have the pedigree of playing deep into the postseason. Now, last year they also got to the conference finals and lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. So, other than the COVID year, they don't have a whole lot of experience in winning the conference final, but they've been there. So I still feel like it was Dallas.
Fair enough. So let's keep going here. Obviously, you have Leon and you have Connor as the two guys that I feel like everyone's familiar with Edmonton. But as you said earlier, a lot of other players on that roster have scored goals in Game 4 and 5 specifically in the series to give Edmonton the advantage. Who are some of the players you feel like Florida really needs to worry about when you take away McDavid and Leon from the equation?
Oh, I think Zach Hyman for sure. Zach Hyman really benefits. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hyman himself is a very good hockey player, but he certainly benefits from playing on that line up there with McDavid. McDavid himself is Gretzky-like in terms of, he's a fantastic goal scorer, but he's also a fantastic facilitator. Remember, the one of the most popular pieces of trivia in hockey is, if you take away all of Wayne Gretzky's goals, he'll still have the most points in NHL history. It's kind of the same level. It's kind of the same concept with McDavid, where McDavid's such a great facilitator. And so anyone who's on his line is going to be great. Zach Hyman is that guy who really benefits from being there. He's always in the right spot at the right time. Like I said, he scored more goals than McDavid this year. And part of that is because of his own skill. Part of that is because he gets to have a great facilitator on that first line with him. Had the third most goals in the regular season, right behind Austin Matthews and Sam Reinhart. This postseason, he's got 14 goals already, which leads the league during the postseason. So I really think that they need not that they should focus on him in exchange for someone else like McDavid, but certainly it's a guy to look out for.
I think there's one wild card on Edmonton that we really have to keep an eye on if he even plays, and that's Evander Kane. Aside from not scoring a goal at all in the series against Dallas, and aside from leading the team this postseason with 35 penalty minutes, he might be injured. He did not play much in Game 6. He went to the bench early on after delivering a check, and we don't even know if he's going to play in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Obviously, Kane's a very good player and sort of a veteran hockey player. What can he bring to the table, if at all?
Well, he's one of those scrappy guys that kind of toes the line for what is dirty and what is just, playing hard. Now, admittedly, I haven't watched a whole lot of Edmonton hockey before the postseason. So other than him,
kind of hard to do, though, as a Southeastern Florida sports reporters, we don't have access to most Canadian networks, especially Edmonton, which is, it's not a small market, but it's definitely not one of the bigger markets, even in Canada.
Exactly. So it is one of those things where I think it helps. I think that once you get to the Stanley Cup, it's a war of attrition. It's a large reason why the Panthers lost last year. Not to take credit away from the Golden Knights, because of course they had a fantastic team. But as you know, the deeper you get into it, it's kind of who's the last man standing. And Evander Kane is not a star by any means, but he's certainly the kind of guy that would have helped Edmonton if he was healthy. Yeah. Again, they haven't said that he's going to miss the series or anything, but I haven't heard anything when it comes to him.
Has Evander Kane has not won a championship, has he? He's sort of turned into a journeyman in the world of the NHL. He's still a very talented player, of course, but he was drafted by Atlanta, that's crazy. Yep. Looking back, he was drafted by the Thrashers.
Yep.
So right now, go ahead, Alex.
No, nothing. Evander Kane did say that he's been playing with a sports hernia for most of the season.
Ouch.
Right now he's not certain that he'll play in Game 1. Certainly doesn't rule him out for the series. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of him this year, but
I'm not sure if that'll be either a positive or a negative for Edmonton if he does or doesn't play.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just not a whole lot that scares me about him. He could play. He could not play.
It is.
It just is.
Yeah. Getting back on track. Unfortunately, I brought up Kane for a reason. It's because Florida kind of has a player in a similar circumstance to Kane, but maybe not as extensive, and that is Carter Verhaeghe. He obviously had a monster start to the postseason against Tampa and Boston. I would say his overall success rate has gone down in this series against the New York Rangers, but don't kid yourself. Verhaeghe is still a phenomenal player. It just feels like we haven't seen as much of Verhaeghe in that New York series as I feel like we would have liked. And again, it's crazy to compare that to Kane, who's been, I don't know what you would call the opposite of a heater, but Kane's been on that. But I feel like I would like to see more out of Verhaeghe in the Stanley Cup. And I feel like we absolutely could.
Sure. I would just say that's kind of just a product, though, of the Rangers defense itself just being good against all the Panthers skaters. There was, off the top of my head, there was really no one who took over the series. There were guys with big moments. Vladimir Tarasenko with the game-winning goal in Game 6. Sam Reinhart with the game-winning goal in Game 4. Yeah, Game 4. There were guys with moments, but I don't think – was there anyone who really, really went above and beyond in that series? I feel like Verhaeghe got 2 goals, and I feel like against that Rangers defense in the kind of series that both teams played, I felt like it was fine. I'm sure we'll see more of him in this series.
I know they don't usually give out MVPs for the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, unlike the NBA. Who would have won it for Florida if there was an MVP for the conference finals specifically? Would it be easy to say Bobrovsky, or would you give it to a player like Kachuk, who made an impact every game if you didn't see it? Obviously, Gustav Forsling, for a defenseman, he was an offensive threat that New York obviously didn't see coming. Obviously, you have Barkov, who was the captain. He's Barkov. Who would you say would have won it for Florida?
Yeah, I think it would have been Gustav Forsling. And you kind of hit it there on the end of your comments, which was not only was his defense great, and we'll talk about that in a second, but he also flexed his goal scoring a little bit, which he doesn't do a whole lot. He had two huge goals in that series. Mm-hmm. And there was the bar down shot in game three. Yeah. He was just fantastic. And there was that breakaway that he broke up in game 5 or game 6. I'm forgetting off the top of my head now. All these games run together.
They do.
Especially when you're a few days removed. But, he stopped that breakaway chance by the Rangers. And then on top of that, he was just unnoticeably good, which when you're on defense, like, I mean that as a compliment. Like, anytime he was on the ice, the Rangers just didn't do anything.
Oh, I forgot to mention Sam Bennett. Bennett has also been on a heater this playoff run. Aside from being physical, he has pissed off Boston fans. He has pissed off Rangers fans. He's just good at pissing everyone off, and I feel like that's a great tool to have. Free roster is a player that can just make the opposing team mad, and no one does that better than Sam Bennett in this Panthers squad.
It's hilarious, and it's one of those things. It's one of my favorite things about the Stanley Cup playoffs is there's always one villain for each series. Remember, it was like Jonathan Tavares for us back in 2016. It was Pat Maroon in like 2021. Oh, there's always a villain, and the villain usually wins.
True.
So it's nice that we have a villain now.
I know. Edmonton doesn't really have a villain. I don't hate Edmonton, right?
No, I think people don't like Vander Kane a lot.
Okay, well, yeah, but
which is ironic because we just mentioned him.
The difference between Kane and Bennett is that Bennett has given reasons as to why you would hate him. Kane really hasn't, at least not in this postseason run so far. I digress. I don't hate. It's funny. Hatred in sports is funny. If Florida did not make the Stanley Cup Final, I probably would have ended up rooting for Edmonton because, again, I'm with you. I want to see McDavid win a ring. The Canadian drought in championships is honestly insane. The fact that the most recent Canadian team to win its sports championship was the Toronto Raptors in the NBA is crazy. With all of that said, obviously a team has to lose, and of course we want it to be the Oilers, but it's just crazy how it plays out like that. What else should we know about this Edmonton team, Alex? Just that you have cooking.
I don't know. I'm just so excited to see what our defense looks like against their offense. It's really an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And I think it's the perfect championship. I think it's the perfect way to end a season is when you have one team that does something really well and then another team that does the opposite thing really well. Mm-hmm. I think it's fantastic.
Alrighty then. I think there's only one thing left we can do as far as the Stanley Cup Final. And again, I hate to reiterate this, but why would I not? I called Florida in 5 over Tampa Bay. I called Florida in 6 over Boston, and we both called Florida over New York in 6. Obviously we're both going to say the Panthers, but how long is it going to take? There are some people online who will think this is a cakewalk. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be tough for the Panthers to win this, but I feel like one big difference between both teams is that Edmonton will be Florida from last year. They're going to be happy to be there. They're going to be happy to finally get over the playoff hunt and get back to the Stanley Cup Finals. But Florida is coming into this championship knowing what it's like to lose one. And that plays a massive factor into how seriously they take it and how much they want to push to win. And obviously we're getting a bit off track here, but that's a big thing in the world of sports. Having the experience of losing in the championship to make sure you give it your all in the next. The Dolphins did that Super Bowl 6. They lost badly. They came back Super Bowl 7. They had that undefeated 1972 season. The Miami Heat, after they lost to Dallas in the NBA Finals, they played some of their best basketball ever, and they destroyed Oklahoma City the following year. And we could be looking at a similar situation here with the Florida Panthers after losing to Vegas last year. They know what it's like to lose. They want to win it more than anyone. And I feel like Florida just wants it more over Edmonton. Just obviously that could all change when the puck drops on Saturday, but I feel like generally speaking, Florida has all the right reasons to want this championship more than the Oilers. I've no joke, I've been flip-flopping between Panthers in 5 and Panthers in 6. I don't think this is not going to 7 in my opinion. But I'm going to go the safe bet here, and I'm going to say the Panthers will win the Stanley Cup in 6 games. I feel that Florida will take the first 2 games. They'll give up either game 3 or 4. They'll also give up 5. So unfortunately, I don't think the series will end here in Sunrise. It'll end in Edmonton, but I feel like they'll get the job done in game 6. I think best case scenario is they win in 5, so you get to raise the cup in front of your fans in Sunrise. But obviously, this is the Panthers team that does not care about whether they're at home or on the road. They play their best hockey regardless. I'm going to say the Panthers will do it in 6 games, Alex.
So before I give you my answer, this is courtesy of the NHL.
Okay.
There have been 4 teams to lose in the Cup and then make it back the very next year. Mm-hmm. The first was the St. Louis Blues, made it to 3 straight Cups in 1968, 69, and 70. They lost all of them. In 1977, the Boston Bruins lost in the Stanley Cup, and then they went back the next year and they lost.
Pittsburgh's done it twice, right?
What?
The Penguins have done it like twice, right?
So that's the good part.
Okay.
The Edmonton Oilers in 1983 lost their first time there. Not the first time there, but the first time in this sequence. Then they went back the next year, and they won. And then in 2008, the Pittsburgh Penguins went to the Stanley Cup against the Detroit Red Wings. Mm-hmm. And then they went back the next year, and they beat the Detroit Red Wings. Actually, it's interesting. Edmonton and Pittsburgh both had a rematch with the teams that they lost to. Edmonton lost to the Islanders at first, and then came back and beat them the next year. Penguins lost to Detroit at first, and then came back the next year and beat them. And now the Panthers are back 1 year later. Mm-hmm. I think they have it in them. I see a lot of the 2023 Florida Panthers in the Edmonton Oilers, except the Panthers didn't fire their coach and get a new one 1 week into the season. But he was a new coach. Paul Maurice was.
Yeah.
Just like Edmonton got a new coach, except, of course, they got one a couple weeks into the season. Just like the Oilers, the Panthers did not start well last year. They just got really hot, but they weren't experienced. They weren't ready for the lights, and they were a little bit injured. This year, I think the Panthers have grown. They didn't touch the Prince of Wales trophy.
Neither did Edmonton.
There was not a huge celebration, at least not in front of the media, for the Panthers.
Right.
I think they're ready. I think it's going to be Florida in 6. They're going to win it in Edmonton. And then we're going to have a big party in Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada.
Okay.
And we are going to lift the cup in front of Edmonton's fans. Game 6.
Not hopefully that one fan. If you know, you know. It stings that we're both on the same page that they're going to win it in Edmonton, but it is what it is. I mean, if you're a Panthers fan, player, etc., you don't care whether they win it. You just want them to win it for the first time in franchise history. I forgot to mention that as well. A big difference between this year and last year, it's the health. Florida's going into this playoff in the Stanley Cup Finals almost completely healthy. Edmonton, they have Kane that they got to worry about, but beyond that, I feel like they're also relatively healthy as well. but still, I don't see Florida as a team as how they were last year, where they gave it all to get here, and then they didn't, and then that was it. They still have a lot left in the tank. I don't know if I can really say the same for Edmonton. I'm going to be completely honest.
We're very healthy. There's nobody that's injured, at least not on the medical report. Everyone's good to go. Everyone is good to go. It's all systems go. No game 7 so far. The Panthers haven't had to sweat a whole lot, and they haven't broken any bones as far as we know. I think they're ready.
I'm happy we got that out of the way. The finals prediction. So we're both just like against New York, we're both Panthers in 6 to get this game done, or get the cup done. What I should say. Yeah, I mean, how exciting is it? I'm super. I want the Stanley Cup to be in like 5 minutes.
I'm nervous.
Saturday.
In theory, the Panthers could have the Stanley Cup in their possession within the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That is so messed up. I mean, seriously. Like, it makes me nervous. Do you ever get this way? I'm nervous that they're going to lose, but I'm also nervous that they're going to win, because what's going to happen if they win? Like, I've never had a team of mine win a championship. Like, I had the Heat win, and I like the Heat, but I like them just kind of in the sense that, like, it's the city's team, and so I root for them. I've never had, like, a childhood team of mine win a championship, like, during my conscious lifetime, right? I had the Marlins do it in 2003, but I don't remember that. I'm so nervous.
My childhood team is the Dolphins, and I haven't seen them win a playoff game, regardless of a Super Bowl win. Their last playoff win was in 2001. I have no recollection of what I was doing when I was 1 year old. I certainly wasn't watching them defeat the Colts in the first round of the playoffs. It's a crazy feeling, and I do love the Heat. Obviously everyone either loved or hated them, but they were watching them when LeBron was on the team, and they won those 2 finals, and that was fun. Walking around the streets, banging the pans with the spoons, bang, 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 bang. I guess that's just what Miami fans do here when their team wins the championship. What was your reaction when the clock hit 000 in Game 6? My reaction was this. All right, I gave a golf clap. I was like, good job, but the job's not finished. Just keep it going. I did not celebrate. I didn't celebrate.
I immediately got on Twitter and started flaming Rangers fans.
That's a good thing. I wish I had
never
done that.
Come back to my county again, or to step foot in my building with a blue jersey on.
I'm not mad about that.
That's the way that Wayne Huizenga wanted us to react when he initially brought hockey to South Florida in 1993. That's what he wanted.
That's what he wanted. Yeah. I didn't celebrate. I did not. Because I celebrated last year when they got by Carolina. I celebrated.
Well, Matthew Tkachuk said it best. He was like, they were just on such a run, and they got so hot, and also combined with, like, the inexperience, they were just happy to be there. Not that they didn't care about winning, but they were so happy for everything that was happening, and they were just like, let's celebrate everything that happens to us. Mm-hmm. This year, there's only one goal, and that's it. That's why they didn't touch the trophy. That's why there was no champagne spraying. That's why there was no cheering. Like, just nothing's done yet.
Yeah.
To them, they haven't accomplished anything this year. To them, if you ask them, what have you accomplished this year? They'll tell you nothing yet.
And by the way, Tkachuk hates Edmonton.
He does.
By the way, Alex, have you seen the logo for Utah has been leaked by the NHL? This will be their logo in their first year of play. They are the Utah Hockey Club, and it looks like this will be their primary look. There's not much to say, really. Oh, they have a few other logos that they trademarked. This one, it's a little bit better. This one is pretty mid, and this one is also mid. It reminds me, the Washington football team, how boring their logos and uniforms, where we're going to have a similar instance to that.
Yeah, that first logo that you showed me looks pretty good as like a patch.
Yeah.
But as a real logo, it's okay.
Again, it's just for 1 year, then they'll change it to something cool. I'm rolling with the Utah Yeti. It rolls off the tongue. It's like 4 words, the first and second part of the name, and I feel like they could do a lot with their look. I like the colors though. If they could keep the colors the same, black and like a ice blue. I like the colors. They should stick with those. All right. Any final thoughts on the Stanley Cup, Alex? Any final thoughts on having to listen to Messier and Subban for at least 4 more games on ESPN? I would have much preferred the TNT crew, but then again, obviously you have Wayne, who would have been all over Edmonton, because duh. So I'm interested to see how they handle this broadcast.
Yeah, no, that's it for me. I'm trying to think. I saw a tweet today. I got to do some research on this.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the name Evan has never been on the Stanley Cup.
I saw that.
I don't know. I just saw it like 5 minutes before we came on, so I haven't had time to research that.
Like,
so
the name Evan has never been engraved on the Stanley Cup trophy ever. Basically.
And the Panthers have Evan Rodriguez.
And the Oilers have an Evan player.
They have an Evan Bouchard.
Oh, so
the name Evan will be on the Stanley Cup within the next month. So big day for Evans.
So that's cool, I guess. Alrighty, Alex. Again, game 1 is on Saturday at 8:00, which really means 8:25. Over on, I believe, ABC. It's an ESPN broadcast, but I think it's going to be on ABC. Every game will be 8:00 on ABC, by the way. Any plans to make the trip up to Edmonton, that ginormous trip?
No.
Alrighty then.
What about you?
Hell no. It would probably take 2 days to drive there, and I don't even think you can get a direct flight from Fort Lauderdale.
No, you can't. You got to connect through like Minneapolis and then like Wood Buffalo, and then take like a seaplane to like some lake in North Alberta, and then you got to take a moose to Edmonton.
But you'll probably get some good walleye. That's a delicious northern fish. Alrighty, Alex. To everyone watching, thank you so much for following us all this way to the Stanley Cup Final, and hopefully a few episodes in, we'll be talking about our initial thoughts after Florida raises the Stanley Cup. They have a lot of work to do, and it's against a good team in the Edmonton Oilers. So we'll catch you back next time, episode 12. But until then, I would say enjoy some hockey, but you can't. Wait until Saturday. Just get hyped, get your merch going, and as always, let's go home, baby!
Send it in.